The Bears have fired head coach Matt Eberflus. It was announced earlier today that Matt Eberflus is no longer the head coach of the Bears after the entire disaster fiasco that took place at the end of their Thanksgiving matchup with the Detroit Lions. And Chicago struggled in the first half of that game. Came back in the second half. Keenan Allen had 2 touchdown grabs. Caleb Williams looked a lot stronger in the second half than he did in the first. At one point left in the second quarter, and Caleb was 2 of 6 for 6 yards. It was an incredibly slow first half for the Bears. They come back in the second half, and Detroit has to punt with little time remaining. The Bears have made it a 3-point game. It's 23-20. Punt gets down at Chicago's own 1, and they get it into Detroit territory. Williams put together, a really solid drive, despite a lot of penalties, despite a lot of sacks. And it gets down to second and long. There's 30-odd seconds remaining. Caleb gets sacked, and they still have a timeout in their pocket. And, everybody in the stadium, everybody watching at home is assuming, okay, they're going to take that last time out here, just try to get a few yards, take the timeout, kick a potential game-tying field goal, send this thing to overtime. But what happens instead is they are slow to get back to the line. Caleb's taking his good old time to yell out signals, and once everybody's set, he's still... time is ticking off the clock, and you hear Nance and Romo in the booth being like, bro, snap the ball. And even so, okay, there's 6 seconds left when he snaps it. If he takes it, throws a quick slant, gets him 4 yards closer, they can call a timeout right away and get the kicking unit onto the field. It still wouldn't have been great, but if they kick a game-tying field goal and eventually win in overtime, nobody's talking about it. It's just looked at as great drive by Caleb to get this thing into overtime. Instead, he launches a long ball. It falls incomplete, and the game's over. And then after the game, Eberflus defends the decision, says that he liked the play call. We liked where we were at there. And that was that. And the Bears lost their 6th consecutive game after starting 4-2. And so earlier today, on Friday, Eberflus took the stand to talk to the media, which everybody then presumed to believe, okay, well, he's not getting fired, at least not this week. And then 2 hours later, the Bears announced that they fired Matt Eberflus. And so just 2 consecutive days of organizational dysfunction on the field, behind the scenes, in the front office, has just played out in the worst of ways. Offensive coordinator, by the way, interim offensive coordinator Thomas Brown will now also be the interim head coach. Because remember, they fired Shane Waldron a few weeks ago because the offense was just not working. Thomas Brown took over. The offenses looked better. But now Thomas Brown having to wear a lot of hats there. And I highly doubt he'll be the guy who gets the head coaching job. And so a few people have asked me both on Twitter, on threads, hey, who do you think is going to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears? And a lot of people, there's going to be the coaching carousel as there is every year. There's now 3 head coaching jobs available with the Saints, the Jets, and now the Bears. And when it comes to Chicago, a lot of people are saying, Ben Johnson, if he would want to come across, work with Caleb Williams, stay within the division, maybe that's a name to watch. That's been the name to watch for the past, this is going to be the 3rd straight offseason. Other names include Joe Brady of the Buffalo Bills, who's their current offensive coordinator. The Bills are 15-3 since he took over as offensive coordinator last year after they fired Ken Dorsey. Potentially Aaron Glenn, if you're staying in Detroit, maybe they poach their defensive coordinator. And after the work that he's done this season with all the injuries that they've had, he's certainly going to be a name that is going to be a hot one during this head coaching search for a lot of these teams in 2025. But to me, for the sake of Caleb Williams, I don't think taking a swing on a first-time head coach would necessarily be the best idea, at least not this year, because of the other names that will be in the pool. And while Ben Johnson could be successful, while Joe Brady could be successful, especially with Joe Brady, like it just feels too soon, right? Where I think that Joe Brady's eventually going to get a head coaching job. I know that Bills fans are really hoping he takes the Ben Johnson route. I was like, look, I'm not going to just take any job. I'm going to take some time to, stay in Buffalo, continue getting better at this before I take a head coaching job. I'm sure a lot of Bills fans would really love if he did that. I don't know if he's gonna. He's certainly going to have his options this offseason, especially if he wanted to go to New Orleans, a place that he has history. So when it comes to Brady, I don't know if the Bears should go that route. Same thing with, an Aaron Glenn, who could be good, but, we saw Eberflus did a really good job as defensive coordinator in Indianapolis, got his first head coaching gig in Chicago, and it didn't work out. They've done a lot of the first-time head coaching things. They did it with Matt Nagy. They did it with Eberflus. So I think this year especially, they should do all they can to hire Mike Vrabel, a guy who has proven to be a top head coach in the NFL, helped turn around the Titans, helped make them a perennial playoff team, helped take them to an AFC championship game, and was kind of scapegoated once the team began to age, once A.J. Brown was traded, a move that, by the way, he did not sign off on, which was clear by his reaction in the war room during the draft when it took place, because he was visibly pissed that they did that. And then they drafted Treylon Burks. Obviously, that hasn't worked out. And this past offseason, he was very surprisingly fired. And so for a team like Chicago, when you have a rookie quarterback, or, a young quarterback who's going to be going into his second year, I think stability and having a guy at the top of it who's been there, done that, has helped turn around a franchise before, I think that would be the best route to go rather than a first-time head coach who's never done it before and who, and again, Joe Brady might end up being a great head coach. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, the same thing. But at the same time, they might not be. We know that Mike Vrabel is a really good head coach. So do all you can to go get him. Have a nice staff built around him to help Caleb, because that's got to be your biggest focus right now. Vrabel can be, the defensive guy as he was in Tennessee, while also doing what he did in Tennessee, letting Arthur Smith take care of the offense, letting Matt LaFleur take care of the offense, both of which ended up getting head coaching jobs because of how good the offense was. So if I'm Chicago, the name that I have circled at the top of my list, it's not Ben Johnson, it's not Aaron Glenn, it's not Brady, and it sure as hell, I know that there's going to be some murmurs about it, hell is not Cliff Kingsbury, it's Mike Vrabel. Go and get the proven guy who's going to have his fair share of suitors this offseason and do all you can to lock him down. Because I don't think it's going to be a mass teardown for the Bears, because as bad as Eberflus has been, Ryan Poles has done a pretty solid job at team building. And I understand that he was kind of the guy standing on the table for Matt Eberflus, and that's fine. Nobody bats 1,000 doing this. But when you look at the moves that he's made since becoming general manager, they've been good moves to bring in established talent. Bringing in DJ Moore, trading for Keenan Allen, Trading for Montez Sweat. The defense has gotten so much better over the last calendar year, where they are legitimately one of the best in football. And a lot of the moves that they've made, the draft picks that they've had, Tyreek Stevenson's panned out. Kyler Gordon on the defensive end, Jaquan Brisker. Though I do think Brisker was in the previous establishment. But regardless, the moves that he has made, they have been good ones in terms of bringing in established guys and trying to really turn around the offense, especially this offseason. He clearly recognized the mistakes of the previous regime with Justin Fields and wanted to do all he could to get Caleb Williams a lot of weapons. That's why you draft Rome Odunze. That's why you trade for Keenan Allen. And on the other side of the ball, trading for Montez Sweat last year to have an established top-tier defensive lineman going into this season with a core of younger guys. That's a smart way to build a team. So, yeah, it wasn't his smartest idea to keep Eberflus around. Even if it looked like it was working earlier in the season when they were 4-2, obviously, it's come back to bite them a little bit. But Ryan Poles, I would say, has done a really solid job of building the roster. It's been more so on the coaching than the general manager. So I think that Ryan Poles is going to be sticking around, and I think that's probably the best idea. And should that be the case, the owners, everybody needs to go all in on getting Mike Vrabel on board. And whatever staff that he builds around them, or around him, and builds around Caleb. Now, we've seen him do it before with Tennessee, where, they bring in Ryan Tannehill, who everybody's like, okay, well, he'll be the backup to Marcus Mariota, I guess. And if Mariota, obviously he struggled. They put in Tannehill, and then they make an incredible run in the playoffs. So we've seen Mike Vrabel do this before. He is I would say he's one of the 10 best head coaches in football, and it's incredible that he didn't get a head coaching job after being fired. Then again, when he was fired, it felt late in the process. It was pretty surprising that it happened to begin with. And it's not like it happened in season where, during the playoffs, you can conduct interviews with other teams. It was a shocking thing for Vrabel to get fired. So I think that when he was employed, he was one of the 10 best head coaches in football. And if you can get that in Chicago, a guy who has been a long tenured head coach with established playoff success, with no disrespect to Ryan Tannehill, but not top tier quarterback play. I think Caleb Williams, in terms of potential, has the potential to be the best quarterback that Vrabel's ever coached by a wide margin. And you look at, the other pieces on the offense that we've already talked about, a really solid receiving trio in DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Keenan Allen. Cole Kmet's a nice tight end. They just need to fix the offensive line. That's going to be their biggest priority in terms of team building in the offseason is, all right, let's fix the offensive line and keep Caleb upright. So Vrabel would be the guy at the top of my list if I was the Bears. Just because you can't afford to take another swing and a miss on a first-time head coach. You've done that plenty of times already. Go and get an established guy who's been there, done that, and can help turn your team around and do it quickly.